Hey everyone, hope you're all having a lovely day today. Today I wanted to talk about something that we actually talked about at the church that I watch online on Sunday, and it's from the verse John 9, and it's basically the story of how Jesus healed the man who was born blind. So in the account, the man is, obviously born blind, and a lot of people are kind of questioning why he was born that way, or why he has that ailment. They're like, did he sin? Did someone from his family sin? And Jesus tells them that he was born that way so that God's power could be manifest in him. This man's ailment was a way for people to see God's power through Jesus healing him. And the pastor of the church that I was watching was kind of trying to get at a different point than what I'm going to make right now. His point was still valid. His point was that God's power being manifest, aka being visible in this situation, should give us comfort, because that means that there's God, that there's more. I'm trying to word this correctly. That God is working behind the scenes, and this was just one way in which we were able to actually see God's power literally being manifest, which is also something that gives us a lot of comfort and gives me a lot of comfort as well, knowing that God is constantly working behind the scenes. But what I was getting from this verse was something a little bit different. What I was getting was, despite this man's ailment, him literally being born with this affliction, God's power was made perfect in that weakness. Not only did God heal him, but this ailment that he had, this struggle that this man had, was a way for him to see God and for others to see God as well. And I think that, the verse, my strength is made perfect in weakness, God's power is made perfect in our weakness, is so relevant here, and I think relevant in a lot of our lives as well. How many of us have been in a situation or found ourselves struggling with something that we're just like, oh my gosh, like there's no way I'd be able to overcome this without God, or, despite my, shortcomings, God's grace is sufficient for me. I think that sometimes God will allow certain struggles to happen to show us how powerful he is so that we can overcome them, or that, if we are staying in a position of, up somewhere that we don't want to be, when Paul's talking about, the thorn in his flesh, God says, my grace is sufficient for thee. It kind of forces us to just rest and trust God and really just trust him with everything. And when we overcome a struggle, we can see God's power being manifest. And if we're staying in a struggle, or if we're in a position that we don't want to be in, that is just kind of what it is at the moment, we can know that God has us there for a purpose, and that God's strength is not only made perfect in weakness, but that God's grace is sufficient for us. I feel like I'm making 2 points, but trying to kind of combine them into one. I guess the point that I'm trying to make is that despite whatever it is that you're going through, God is working through it. We can trust that he has a plan. If we come out on the other side, we can see that God is working through it, and that we can see God's power. And if we're in the situation presently and it doesn't seem like we're moving anywhere, 1, we know that God is still working behind the scenes, and 2, we're there for a reason. I always talk about, just 2 examples, when I was in college, that awful junior year where I was struggling really badly with like mental health and just obsessive, intrusive thoughts. And I remember in those moments thinking, God, like literally why? Like, why can't you just take me out of this? Or even more so, why am I even struggling with this to begin with? I remember I even felt the same way with like homosexuality. And not only were both of those a way for God's power to be made manifest, both to have grace sufficient for us and also for him to be able to bring us out of something, but it also is a way for other people to kind of see what we're going through and to know that there's no way we'd be able to overcome something if it hadn't been for God. It's another opportunity to witness and to add to our testimonies. Because again, it's not us who's doing the work, it's God in us. So I really hope this video helped whoever needed to hear this. As always, if you ever have any comments, questions, or concerns, do not ever hesitate to leave me a comment down below or shoot me an email at my email address, which will be down here. Also, I have an Instagram for this channel where I give updates. I always say that I'm going to post fun, artsy, pretty Bible verses, and then that unfortunately never happens. Also, let me know if you have any prayer requests. And as always, have a lovely rest of your day, and God bless.